CFO talking about, sorry sir, we spent an extra $200,000 or $500,000 or something. So this is where the complexity comes for us, and having a partner that has the localized resources is priceless, and that understands the style, has access to resources in country, and can partner with our people and speak the same language. How are we pushing this out from a load management perspective? Well, here's our three primary audiences. You've got our executive group, you've got our, executive overview group. That's why there's 1,000 people in there. We only have 150 executives. Our salaried population, and these are just domestic numbers, and our hourly population. NRA baseline training, once that's out, we push it here to the hourly population. First three modules start here, cascade down. Once that kind of sticks a little bit, then we push it out to the hourlies. Big pushback we have. How the hell are you going to train 150,000 people in like 2 months? What the hell are you thinking, right? I said, well, it would really suck to be me to have to train 150,000 people, right? But that's not really what we're doing, right? If you think about it at that scale, there's no way you can do that. But the way I like to think about it is, on average, how many direct reports, how many hourly direct reports does a manager have at the front line, right? Because that's the number that dictates how long it should take or how much time we should give them to push down this training. In our organization, it's pretty manageable for the most part. Anywhere from 6 to about 25 was the range, right? Right, for most of the organizations. However, in sports and entertainment, right, all of a sudden, season opens up, oh, we got 3,000 people showing up for training, right? So it's a little bit of a different model at sports and entertainment, but generally, from 5 to 40 people, it's really hard for people to say, wow, you know what, I can't teach my people 15, 20, 30 minutes worth of learning in 2 months. It's almost impossible for them to push back. So that's the way we think about from a load perspective. And is it achievable to push it out in a couple months? As we get better, right, the timeline's going to start to compress, right? Because it's not the first time we've done it. Everybody gets their kind of ebb and flow. They understand the tools. They understand the button clicks to push and things of that sort. So sustainability, and this is the last slide, which is probably the most important part, right? It's that closed loop process that helps us. However, by having the LMS, we're able to tightly define audiences and define them by line of business. And even within a line of business, there's sub-businesses or sub-organizations. So for instance, in sports and entertainment, you have stadiums and arenas, you have parks and destinations, you've got cultural attractions, right? So we've defined audiences for those sub-businesses, but not person by person, because that's not sustainable, but by title codes. So now, when people change, all of a sudden now I'm the new general manager at some place, the LMS will know that, wow, I'm a new general manager, I'm hired from the outside. Automatic will get integrated as part of onboarding. They're going to get an initiative overview, because guess what? They weren't here for all the wonderful communication barrage that we did around this initiative. So we're actually building a module that explains what the hell we're doing, why we're doing, and more importantly, now as a new general manager, what is your role and responsibility to deliver training, how you deliver it, the overview of the tools, so on and so forth. So this is how we're looking to build sustainability. With that, any questions?
I have two, I guess, kind of from either end of your development process there. So the front end, standards document driven to build the content. So the question is, did you run into situations where the block standard document turned out to be less block than you thought it was? And then
Skillsoft loves that, by the way.
Didn't hear it here.
Yeah, Tom got a new BMW because of that.
And then at the back end, at the localization process, I mean, how much of that is involving cultural differences as opposed to just language?
A lot. And hence the local instructional designer, the local people doing it. From a budgeting perspective, 65% of the spend to create a US module. We expect to spend 65% for the localized piece, right? So we expect different pictures, right? Because we don't all look the same. We use different tools, right? In China, you may see woks in the kitchen, right? You don't see very many woks here in the US in the kitchen. So we expect that to change out pictures, legalese, document changes. So 65% financially to get to that localization, customization piece of it.
So knowing how expensive translations can be, where do you draw the line in which courses you translate and which ones you don't?
Well, this is an enterprise standard. So
Do you translate everything?
well, for this initiative, yes.
Okay.
Every standard will be translated. These are ARAMARK
Well,
standards.
standards, sure, because that's a compliance.
Yes.
But if you look at your
Other courses,
yeah.
I'll answer that in about a year or so. I don't know yet. Certainly the answer is going to be not all.
We have time for one more question.
I have a question for you. You're new in the sandbox, and that's fun. I mean, you can tell you're having a great time here. I'd like you to come back in like 24 minutes
Okay.
and tell us how many how to make a pizza courses you have.
From a catalog perspective,
From a catalog perspective, from a development, from a pull perspective, from just because what I'm curious, what are you doing here in terms of QA and QC?
from a content perspective.
From a content perspective and from a control, I mean, you've got a very wide and deep organization here, culturally diverse, globally diverse, and you're moving really fast.
Really fast.
Really fast.
So here's the deal. There's very few people, to purchase an Articulate license at ARAMARK. You can't. Number one, right? Because it's fire. And every Articulate license purchase goes through my group, right? So we tell people, no, you don't need that because you don't need to be creating e-learning. So that's number one for not giving the wrong people the hammer, right? Because they'll break their thumbs. The other piece of it is allowing people to actually push content into the learning management system, right? That requires administrator rights and all sorts of things. Guess what? Very few people in each line of business in each country will have the rights to actually push content into the LMS. There'll be lots of administrators that run a program, so on and so forth, but not everybody will have the rights to push content in. So initially, right, theoretically, that is how we're going to be controlling that growth and doling out functionality.
And another quick it's the same question, Dave. My question is of that hourly workforce, of the 15,000.
Those are salaries.
How many you had a lot of hourly workers.
150,000.
150,000. How many were, are you paying them to take the training?
We pay everybody, because if we wouldn't, that would violate wage and hour laws.
Okay, so you are paying them to take the training. And what's the turnover with that? I mean,
Absolutely.
like if you have an onboarding course, are we going to be giving it to a new 100,000 every year? I mean, what are... So
for the hourly workforce, right, the bulk of that is going to be leader-led instruction, right? So we've loaded the hourly records as records-only users. So the manager goes in and clicks that, yes, I've trained Billy, I've trained Janie, I've trained Bobby. So they have recurring reports that they'll be able to see as far as who's trained and who's not trained. Turnover is a big deal for us, right? However, we see about an 80% turnover rate in our hourly workforce. Though that sounds like a lot, right? But it's a lot better than most of the food service industry. So if you look at quick service food industry, you're looking at 120, 130% turnover. So we're actually pretty good as it comes to turnover in that perspective. But all training, hourly workers, even if they do have full access to the LMS, will not be able to take courses when they're not on the clock, because that is something we're not even going to get close to, not even, including salaried non-exempt, because that's another funky gray area. So we're going to talk about wage and hour. hives.
Well, thanks everybody. As part of your 24-month return, based on the chart we saw, you're going to have something to tell us about social learning and how that launches itself too, with all the groups we've been talking about. Well, thank you very much, Liviu Dedes, for coming out, working with us tonight, and your generous supply of time and knowledge, and thinking in terms of those standards that involve napkins and things like that. What I want to do is give you one tool that will help out with at least that part of the effort. Thanks on our behalf.
Nice. I could sign the invoice.